James Ernest of the Grueling Truth, here with author Jeff Bukowski, author of the book Play On. So, Jeff, tell us about your new book.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Play On is about this revolution that's happening in sports, where we're seeing athletes. It is elite athletes in almost every sport you look at, playing longer, and in many cases having their best performances past the age that maybe a generation ago would have been considered the peak age for athletes in that sport, where they start to decline and kind of move towards retirement. I mean, I'm talking about people like Roger Federer, Serena Williams, Tom Brady, obviously, Bartolo Colon. The list just goes on and on. It's something that you can't avoid hearing about if you're any kind of sports fan. And I wanted to know what's causing this incredible growth in longevity. Mostly because I'm sort of a very mediocre amateur athlete. I'm 41. And I was having, as in my own athletic life, I was having exactly the kind of problems that I think most of us, run into as we get into our 30s and 40s. And it was limiting me from being able to do what I wanted to do. So I said, obviously something's working for these athletes. I want to know what it is.
Exactly. I mean, it's amazing how it is shifted over time, the ability for athletes to perform longer. What are they? How were you able to get the access to these athletes, trainers, coaches, science? That they were willing to share this information with you.
In a lot of different ways. I mean, some athletes want to talk about their age because they're really proud of what they've been able to accomplish. They know better than anybody how much more it takes to succeed at in a 35-year-old body than a 25-year-old body, and they want to tell their stories. So somebody like Donald Driver from won a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. He was somebody who really liked talking about his age. Some of them don't. Some of them are very secretive, and they want to keep it a secret, or some of them are looking to make money from their secrets. So Tom Brady, he's got this guy Alex Guerrero, who's his quote unquote body guru. And I talked to Alex Guerrero about some of his methods, and was going to meet Tom Brady. But then, right around that time, Tom Brady decided he was going to publish his own book, and he's made quite a lot of money from that. So good for him. But it just all depends. In a lot of cases, a lot of my best interviews were actually with scientists and coaches, doctors, people like that, who are, of course, the ones who actually design these programs. I mean, athletes are, their job is to be athletes. Their job is not to be sports scientists. So in many cases, if you really want to know what's working and what's not, you go right to the source.
Is there a peak age anymore in athletics, or is it kind of wide open now?
Well, the body is still the body. So there are absolutely some processes that begin, depending on what system of the body you're looking at, anywhere from your early 20s to around 40, and you can slow those down. In some cases, you can kind of temporarily reverse some of those changes, but yeah, I mean, we're not at the point right now where we're going to see 60-year-olds compete with 25-year-olds, but we certainly have seen in some sports the peak age move by 5 years. In a sport like take tennis, for instance, that was one where the cliche was that 28 was the age where athletes really, somebody who was over 28 was considered over the hill in tennis. Andre Agassi said that once he passed that age, he couldn't go into a tournament without everybody talking about how old he was. And now you look at who's dominating that game. It's the conventional wisdom has turned around so far that they almost say that the players who are 22, 23 years old, they're at a disadvantage because it takes such a long time to build up the kind of fitness and mental fortitude that you need to compete at the highest levels of tennis now.
What is the most surprising thing you learned during your research?
I would say the most surprising thing I learned had to do with science around some really interesting research around why people get injured course, we know that the more experience you have as an athlete, the better you get at your sport. Of course, right? They say the game slows down is what you always hear, and that's true. There's your mental processing speed makes a huge difference. That's why we see so many quarterbacks now over 30. I mean, again, another place conventional wisdom has changed. It's almost the rule now that it takes until age 30 to really master the mental part of being a quarterback because the game has gotten so complex. So you see someone like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Carson Palmer. These guys are just so much faster at processing. The really interesting I learned is that advantage in mental processing speed also translates into injury risk. So your mind, as you're in a novel situation like being in the middle of a play on a football field, your mind is processing all these different outcomes that might happen and basically preparing your body for a physical response at an unconscious level faster than you could ever mentally consciously prepare yourself. This guy named Buzz Swanik, who studies cognitive factors and injury risk, has done studies that show basically that mental processing speed is a big factor in determining why people get injured. So, if you look at someone like Tom Brady and you say, how is it that he's been able to play for 20 years, well, getting so few injuries, part of the reason is actually because he's been playing for 20 years. If he played another 20 years, if his body didn't change anymore, he would actually be at a lower injury risk than he is now.
Oh, wow. So, in other words, they know kind of just how to react to those things that would cause injuries, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, if it's basically a game like football. It's all about surprise, right? You're disguising your defense's pre-snap looks. You're trying to trick the other team, and you're really trying to confuse the other team into responding to what you're doing in some kind of uncoordinated or confused way. And that kind of uncoordinated confusion is when non-contact injuries happen. If you look at a player who tears his ACL, he's nowhere near the ball, and then he's running into him, they'll always say, it was so surprising. I don't even know how it happened, because that's when your body is sort of at its least protected. It's encountering a situation that it's physically unprepared for.
The new ways to train. What was the best one that you encountered?
Well, there are some really interesting training technologies. A big trend in sort of sports tech is towards these training systems or training modalities that attempt to separate undesirable physical stresses from desirable physical stresses. So your body obviously needs to experience a certain amount of stress, of physical stimulus, in order to adapt and get stronger, right? But you don't. What happens is a lot of the time that stress that you want comes along with stresses you don't want. So you're trying to build up your muscles, but your joints are taking a pounding, something like that. So there's these really interesting things. Like there's this blood flow restriction training is something that's been understood by weightlifters for a long time. That you can if you sort of tie off your muscles so that blood can't flow back through your veins while you're lifting weights. What happens is this really interesting thing where because the capillary walls are getting stressed, they're reacting as though they're being worked much harder than they are. So I did this blood flow restriction training. I was curling like water bottles, little 500 milliliter water bottles. I was doing bicep curls with them, and it felt like I was lifting 45-pound barbells. So that's something where it basically tricks your body into thinking it's working out harder than it is. So you are getting the beneficial stresses, but you're not getting the stresses you don't want.
Sounds great. It sounds like a really nice way to do things to advance athletes.
It's really promising for athletes who are rehabbing from injuries. If you have something where you want to keep fit, you want to keep your muscles strong so that you can get back onto the field as soon as possible, but you have to favor, say you have an ACL that's being repaired, you can't put a lot of weight on it. Something like this blood flow restriction training, which there's a Japanese company called Katsu that makes a system for it. Something like that is proving really popular with sort of high tech athletes.
So, do you feel the technologies are changing sports for the better?
would say that it's so hard to answer that in a blanket way because at the same time as technologies are changing sports, of course, we know that they're changing in all sorts of other ways that are not necessarily producing healthier athletes. Seasons are getting longer, equipment is changing, field surfaces are changing, and a lot of those things are part of the reason that they think that even though medicine's getting better and technology is getting better, in most sports you do see the injury rate continuing to go up. But I absolutely think technology has the potential to change sports for the better, and in some ways we are seeing it.
You mentioned how you had tried some of the techniques. Was there one that you just saw and go, no, I'm not trying that. That one's just too out there?
There was nothing that I saw, but there was one thing. I mean, this is not an extremely high tech technique, but it is something that's a lot more popular with elite athletes than with the general population. There's you may have seen it in the gym. There's this thing, the Versa climber, that you sort of simulate mountain climbing on it, like climbing up a hillside on all fours. And it's really popular with like ultra marathoners, ultra endurance athletes. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they said that they used this machine a couple years ago when they were heading into the playoffs, and the trainer felt like they needed to kick their fitness up a notch. And all the players said that they hated this thing so much that they bonded over it as a team. I tried that once for about 4 minutes, and I almost threw up on the floor of the gym with members of the Arizona Coyotes NHL team all sitting around me watching me, wondering if I was going to die.
Oh, damn. That sounds quite intense. What do your findings mean for pro athletes? Do you feel that they're going to be able to last longer and extend their careers?
I think we're absolutely seeing that. I think we're seeing. I think what we're seeing is pro athletes are able to capitalize on the value of the experience that they have. If you take physical decline from aging out of the equation, the more experience you have, the better, right? And therefore, all other things being equal, a 4-year-old should be better at his job than a 25-year-old. I think that we're never going to see that happen 100%, but I think we are absolutely seeing that happen in a big way. And in a sport like football that has a huge huge mental and psychological component, and where they're changing it in a lot of ways to make the game a little bit safer. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Tom Brady's still playing and winning championships at 45. I wouldn't be shocked if he's doing it at 50.
Going into it, you mentioned how you were trying to, solve those problems for the weekend warriors like me and you. What benefits will you be able to take away from that for your sports?
For me, the benefits that I've taken, the biggest one is probably understanding this new approach to training that everybody should be doing. Basically, I think it's the best way to train for everybody, but it has really unique, extra benefits the older you get, which is the big change in athletic conditioning over the last 15, 20 years has been this appreciation for the importance of freshness rather than just fitness. So, if you look at the way, for instance, the NFL preseason was run 20 years ago. It was all about working these guys into the ground. We do 2-a-days. We're gonna break you down and build you back up. That now is clearly not the right way to train players. And what was happening is it was responsible for a lot of the injuries that were happening. What sports scientists have realized is that the accumulation of fatigue is responsible for a lot of the injuries you see. So what you need to do is be able to clear your fatigue in between workouts or in between games to make sure that you're able to perform your best, but also to make sure that you're not going to sustain unnecessary injuries. That's why you see teams now in the NBA, especially and in other sports, resting their healthy players during the season. That was something that wasn't happening 20 years ago. When the San Antonio Spurs, who were the first team to really do this in a systematic way in the U.S., when they started resting their healthy players during the season, the coach was getting fined by the league because it was such a weird thing to be doing, and it was really pissing off the fans. But it worked. It kept the players healthier. It kept them performing better. And now you see it happening in every sport. To me, that's the biggest thing I take away is understanding how to balance fitness and freshness and some specific strategies for doing that.
If fans are wanting to follow you and learn more about these techniques, learn more about, and read your other writings, where on social media and the web should they check you out at?
Well, I am San Francisco bureau chief at Inc. magazine, a business magazine where I cover new technologies, including a lot of new sports and fitness tech. I've written about, among other things, I've written about this fledgling industry of measuring athletes' movements, measuring the movements with using things like force plates and motion capture systems to try to analyze it and determine where their injury risks are so that they can be trained to move in healthier ways. That's one place you can find me. On Twitter, I'm at Jeff Berkovitzy. And I write for a lot of different publications. I have a piece coming out in the Wall Street Journal next week. I'm all over the web, really.
Sounds great, Jeff. We greatly appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Great conversation.
Excellent.